I discovered my wife's betrayal on a Tuesday evening, and in that moment, I chose justice over vengeance. My name is Zach Caldwell, and I'm 32 years old. Each morning, I still wake at 5 to review spreadsheets and bank statements in our My Condo's spare room. I had built everything around promises I thought were unbreakable. Weekend overtime for mortgage payments, quiet dinners at home, and a savings account that grew steadily each month. The signs were there, I see that now. Small discrepancies in credit card statements, business trips that never quite added up, and the way she stopped meeting my eyes across our kitchen table. When the truth emerged, I didn't rage or break things. I documented. I planned. I prepared. But let me start from the beginning. And this is Zach. He's a friend from the neighborhood. Sophia's voice carried that polished warmth she reserved for corporate events, the one that made everyone lean in closer. But I felt my stomach drop as she gestured casually in my direction, her wedding ring catching the light of the hotel ballroom chandeliers. A friend from the neighborhood. The words echoed in my head as I stood there in the suit I'd bought specifically for her company functions, the one she'd helped me pick out last spring. Back then, she'd smiled and said it made me look like I belonged in her world. Her VP, David Reynolds, extended his hand with the practiced smoothness of someone who'd made networking into an art form. "Good to meet you, Zach." His eyes had already moved past me, back to my wife. She glowed under the attention, all perfect makeup and calculated charm. You know that feeling when something breaks inside you, but you can't let it show on your face? I managed a polite nod, kept my expression neutral as I watched them drift toward the bar. His hand settled at the small of her back. Intimate, possessive. The gesture sparked knowing glances from nearby colleagues. Someone chuckled. The sound carried. I remembered helping Sophia practice presentations in our living room, her insisting we use proper titles so she'd stay professional at work. "Mr. Reynolds leads the acquisition team," she'd explained. But there was nothing professional about the way she leaned into his touch now, or how her laugh seemed to chase his every comment. The marble floors of the Grand Phoenix Hotel had never felt more like a stage, and I was clearly the wrong prop for tonight's performance. Every time I caught Sophia's eye across the room, she'd look away, surgical, deliberate. Each dismissal landed like a paper cut, small, precise, but they started to bleed. Have you ever watched someone you love transform into a stranger? It happens in fragments, a shifted glance, a rewritten introduction, a laugh that suddenly feels like it belongs to someone else. The evening crawled by until finally we stepped into the cool night air of the parking lot. The click of Sophia's heels on asphalt seemed to count down to something inevitable. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed, whirling to face me. The polished mask had cracked, revealing something harder underneath. "Why do you have to be so needy? You're making a scene just standing there, making everyone uncomfortable." My throat felt tight. "I'm your husband." God, this is exactly what I mean. Not everything has to be about our marriage. These are my colleagues, my career. She jabbed the elevator button for our floor. Learn to read the room. Later that night, I lay in our bed, the one we'd picked out together at that little boutique in the city, and stared at the ceiling. The sound of Sophia's measured breathing beside me felt like a stranger's. My chest ached with questions I wasn't ready to ask. How long had our marriage been a performance? How many other roles had she cast me in without my knowledge? The darkness offered no answers, only the slow tick of our bedroom clock marking time toward whatever truth waited ahead. 2 nights after the party, I spread the evidence across our dining room table while Sophia was still at work. Each piece laid out with careful precision: hotel folios, credit card statements, time-stamped photos. The oak surface we'd chosen together at that craftsman's workshop in Vermont now held a different kind of history. I traced my finger over a Grand Phoenix hotel receipt from 3 weeks ago. The amount matched perfectly with her emergency strategy session that had run until 2 a.m. 5 other hotel charges lined up with similar late nights. My hands didn't shake as I arranged them chronologically. That surprised me. The photo from the party was last. Someone from accounting had sent it, thinking they were being helpful. "Great seeing you and Sophia." But there it was in high definition. Reynolds' hand settled at her waist, fingers spread possessively while they shared what looked like a private joke. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m., about when I'd been standing alone by the dessert table, wondering why my wife couldn't meet my eyes. The front door clicked open at 7:30. Sophia's heels announced her arrival, followed by the familiar rustle of her dropping her bag. "What's all this?" She paused in the dining room doorway, still wearing her office smile. That faded as her eyes tracked across the table. "Have a seat," I said quietly. "We need to talk about these." "These?" She picked up the nearest folio, her laugh brittle. "You're going through my work expenses now. 6 nights at the Grand Phoenix, all matching your strategy sessions with Reynolds." The first tears appeared right on cue. "You're being ridiculous. Those were legitimate business meetings. At midnight? In hotel rooms?" I kept my voice steady. "The corporate policy manual says all after-hours meetings have to be in office spaces. You helped write that policy." Her tears vanished like they'd never existed. "Are you spying on me now? This is paranoid, Zach. Completely paranoid." I slid the party photo forward. "Is this paranoid too?" "Oh my God." She threw up her hands, switching to sharp anger. "A coworker's hand on my waist? That's your smoking gun? This is sad, even for you." "I want full transparency," I said. "Every meeting, every charge, every interaction. Or we start talking to lawyers about separation." That's when the laugh came. Cold, scornful, nothing like the warm sound I remembered from our early days. She leaned across the table, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. "Really? You're going to threaten me with lawyers? Please." Her smile turned razor sharp. "You really think you can afford either option? The transparency or the separation?" My stomach nodded, but I held her gaze. "Try me. Detective games and empty threats." She straightened, smoothing her blazer. "I'm going to bed. Clean up your little investigation before morning. And Zach?" She paused at the stairs. "Next time you want to play cop, remember who pays the majority of our mortgage." I sat there long after she'd gone up, listening to her laughter echo in my head. The evidence stayed spread across the table like a map to somewhere I wasn't sure I was ready to go. The next morning, my coffee went cold while I stared at Caleb's contact info on my phone. We'd been friends since college, but asking for help felt like admitting defeat. The morning sun threw familiar shadows across our kitchen counter. How many times had Sophia and I shared breakfast here, planning our future? I hit dial before I could second-guess myself. "Zach?" Caleb answered on the second ring. "You're up early. Got time for coffee? I need your expertise." 20 minutes later, we sat in the corner booth at Murphy's Diner, where the vinyl seats had seen better days, but the coffee never stopped flowing. I'd brought copies of everything in a manila envelope. My hands were steady as I passed it over, but my voice caught when I tried to explain. "Take your time," Caleb said, spreading the documents methodically. The paralegal in him was already showing through, his eyes scanning dates and signatures. "I feel like an idiot," I admitted, "having to investigate my own marriage." "Hey," Caleb looked up sharply. "Paper trails don't lie. People do. Let's see what the numbers tell us." For the next hour, we cross-referenced bank statements against her travel claims. Caleb's laptop became command central, spreadsheets growing as patterns emerged. The waitress kept our mugs full, probably wondering why 2 guys were doing accounting at 7 a.m. "Look at these reimbursements," Caleb said, turning his screen. "They're coded as client entertainment, but the amounts match standard room rates at the Grand Phoenix. And the dates line up with her strategy sessions," I finished. The shame in my gut was mixing with something else now. Relief. Relief that someone else could see it too. "We need to talk to HR," Caleb decided. "This many overlapping expenses? They'll want to know." By 9, we were sitting in Dana Greer's office at Sophia's firm. The HR director's reading glasses caught the fluorescent light as she reviewed our documentation. Her composure never cracked, but her pen tapped steadily against her legal pad. "Mr. Caldwell," she said finally, "these travel records for Victor Reynolds," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "they show remarkable correlation with your wife's reported client meetings." My throat felt tight. "And? Your documentation appears consistent." Dana's tone was measured, professional. "The expense patterns you've highlighted warrant attention." She laid out the relevant papers, pointing to specific dates. "Mr. Reynolds was in Phoenix these 3 nights, and these 2 in Denver. Each time." "Sophia was there too," I finished. My hands had started trembling, but not from fear anymore. This was validation. Proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't making things up. "We'll need to review this internally," Dana said. "But I appreciate you bringing it to our attention." Walking out of her office, Caleb squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, though my chest felt hollow. "At least now I know I'm not imagining things." "No," Caleb agreed, his expression thoughtful as he flipped through his notes. And there might be something else. Let me check a few things about your prenup. 3 days after meeting with Dana Greer, I found myself climbing the narrow stairs to Caleb's third-floor apartment. The evening air was thick with summer heat, and somewhere a neighbor's TV droned through an open window. My shirt stuck to my back, though maybe that was more from anxiety than the temperature. Caleb answered my knock with an energy drink in hand, his sleeves already rolled up. "Thanks for coming over. I think I found something." His living room had transformed into a war room, with stacks of legal texts scattered across his coffee table. The familiar scent of his vanilla tobacco candle mixed with printer ink. I remembered helping him move in here 5 years ago, sharing beers and laughing about his obsession with organizing his law books by subject matter. "Remember this?" He held up a thick document in a blue folder. I squinted at it. "Should I?" "Your prenuptial agreement. You mentioned signing something before the wedding, so I had the courthouse pull the filed copy." My stomach lurched. The prenup had been Sophia's idea, something about protecting our individual assets. I'd signed it without much thought, trusting her when she said it was standard procedure for professionals. "Watch this," Caleb said, flipping through the pages with practiced efficiency. His index finger landed on a dense paragraph, and he started reading aloud. "In the event of proven infidelity by either party, the discovering spouse may petition for an immediate freeze of joint assets, provided legal filing occurs within 30 days of initial discovery." The blood drained from my face. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means," Caleb leaned forward, "if you can prove she's cheating and file within 30 days of finding out, you can lock down the accounts. Everything, savings, investments, property, gets frozen until the court sorts it out." My hands felt numb. 30 days from when? When did you first have concrete evidence? The party, right? When she introduced you as her friend and you saw her with the VP? I nodded, my throat tight. "That started your clock." Caleb grabbed his calendar. "Which means you've got 18 days left." 18 days. The weight of it hit me like a physical blow. Is that enough time? To build an airtight case? With what we already have from HR? Caleb's eyes sparked with determination. "It's tight, but we can do it. We'll need to move fast, though." Later, on the train home, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. The document folder felt heavy in my hands. Other passengers dozed or scrolled through phones, oblivious to how my world had just shifted on its axis. The rattling of the train marked time passing, time I couldn't afford to waste. 18 days to protect everything I'd worked for, 18 days before this chance evaporated. I clutched the prenup tighter, watching the city lights blur past. The next station announcement echoed through the car. Next stop, Franklin Avenue. Somewhere in our condo, Sophia was probably wondering where I was. Maybe she was on the phone with him. Maybe she was already moving money around, thinking I'd never find out, never fight back. The prenup's pages crinkled under my grip as the train slowed for my stop. 18 days. The clock was running. The shift in Sophia's behavior hit like a weather change, sudden and disorienting. One morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and banana pancakes, her specialty from our early dating days. She stood at the stove in one of my old t-shirts, humming while she flipped perfect golden circles. "Morning, handsome," she chirped, sliding a plate toward me. I took the morning off. "Thought we could have breakfast together like we used to." My fork hovered over the pancakes. When was the last time she'd cooked anything? I checked my watch. 7:15 a.m., documented the time and date in my notes app while pretending to check emails. That was just the beginning. Throughout the week, flirty texts lit up my phone. "Missing you," and "Remember that weekend in Vermont?" Each one landed like a splinter under my skin. I saved them all, watching the timestamp patterns. Then, just as suddenly, the warmth vanished. 3 nights in a row, she didn't come home until after 10, offering no explanation beyond a shrug. The 4th night, she spent 2 hours on a work call in our guest room, her voice too low to hear through the door. I sat in the living room, my laptop open to our joint account dashboard, watching our savings balance like it might sprout legs and run. The threat started exactly 9 days after the pancake morning. We were doing dishes, or rather, I was washing while she leaned against the counter, tapping at her phone. "You know," she said casually, "with the market so volatile, it would be stupid to divide up the condo right now. The fees alone would eat whatever equity we've built." I kept scrubbing a pot, my knuckles white around the sponge. "Is that so?" My colleague Julia? Her divorce cost more than her first year of college, and that was amicable. She set her phone down with deliberate care. Just something to think about. I thought about it, all right? At 3 a.m., staring at my phone's harsh glow, I thought about little else. The text threads, bank statements, and timestamps blurred together until my eyes burned. "You're doing everything right," Caleb assured me over lunch. "Document everything. Stay steady." But something felt off, deeper than the emotional manipulation. The numbers in our accounts didn't quite add up to our expenses. Small discrepancies at first, growing larger each week. Then I found it. I was cross-referencing statements when a recurring transfer caught my eye. $2,800 monthly to something called Executive Living Solutions. I'd never seen it before, but it matched perfectly with recent reimbursement deposits from her company. My hands shook as I dug deeper. There it was, a lease agreement for a luxury apartment downtown, coded as a business expense. And underneath that, a credit line opened 6 months ago with my signature on it. Except I'd never signed anything. I held my phone closer, comparing the signature to one from our mortgage papers. Close, but the loop on the K was wrong. She, or someone, had traced it from an existing document. The room tilted sideways. This wasn't just about her VP anymore. This was calculated financial fraud, using my name like a blank check while she built her exit strategy. I touched the forged signature on my screen, bile rising in my throat. All those nights I'd lain awake, thinking I was fighting to save my marriage. But she'd been 10 steps ahead, orchestrating a different kind of betrayal entirely. I drove straight to Caleb's apartment, the forged documents burning a hole in my laptop bag. The clock on his microwave blinked 9:47 p.m. when he opened the door. "You look like hell," he said, stepping aside to let me in. The familiar scent of his coffee maker, he never turned it off, hit me as I entered. "Remember how you said paper trails don't lie?" I pulled out my laptop, hands steadier than I felt. "Look at this." We hunched over his kitchen counter while I showed him everything. The Executive Living Solutions transfers, the reimbursement patterns, and finally, the forged signature on the credit line. Caleb's whistle cut through the quiet. "This isn't just infidelity anymore, Zach. That's straight-up fraud. Tell me what I'm looking at legally." I kept my voice level, but my fingers drummed against the granite countertop. He grabbed his reading glasses, examining the signature closer. "This is enough to trigger multiple claims. Financial fraud, identity theft." He paused, eyes narrowing. "How much has she pulled from this credit line?" I showed him the statement. His eyebrows shot up. "Jesus. Okay, we need to move fast. Every day this stays open is another day she could max it out or open more accounts." Caleb started pacing, something he did when piecing together strategy. "The 30-day window on the prenup is actually working in our favor now. We can bundle everything together, the infidelity, the fraud, the hidden apartment, and hit her from all sides." The walls of his kitchen seemed to press closer. I remembered all those overtime hours, the careful budgeting, our savings that had felt so solid. How much damage can she do before we stop this? "That's why we're not waiting." Caleb grabbed his phone. "We coordinate with HR first thing tomorrow. Dana Greer already has half the proof we need about the VP. We get your attorney to prepare an emergency petition." He checked his calendar. "Judge Patel's on rotation this week. She's tough but fair, especially with financial cases." All at once, the strategy started taking shape in my mind. All at once, HR confronts them about the misused funds and reimbursements. Your attorney files for the freeze and fraud investigation. Judge Patel reviews everything before the 30 days expire. He looked up. "It's the only way to make sure she can't move money around or destroy evidence once she realizes we know." I nodded slowly, feeling an odd mix of terror and calm settle over me. "When?" "Tomorrow morning. I'll call Dana now, set up first thing. Your attorney can file by noon." Caleb's voice held the certainty I needed. "Pack every document, every statement, every screenshot. We only get one shot at this." 2 hours later, I stood outside my attorney's office, a heavy file box under my arm. The street was empty except for a few taxis, their headlights cutting through the dark. Inside that box sat every scrap of proof I'd gathered. Bank records, text messages, photos, forged documents. My entire marriage reduced to paper and pixels. I stared at my reflection in the office's darkened windows. Would it be enough? Would each piece hold up under scrutiny, or would it all crumble the moment someone started asking hard questions? The box seemed to grow heavier as I slid it into the overnight drop room. Everything we'd found, everything we'd built the case on, Tomorrow, it would all face its first real test. Dana Greer's conference room felt smaller at 8 a.m. than I remembered. I'd arrived 15 minutes early, arranging 3 black folders on the polished table with mechanical precision. My hands didn't shake, but my throat felt tight. The VP walked in first, all corporate confidence until he saw me. His step faltered for just a fraction. Then he recovered, adjusting his tie. "What's this about?" "Please have a seat, Mr. Hayes." Dana's voice carried that special HR tone, professional but with steel underneath. She stood at the head of the table, reading glasses perched precisely on her nose. "We'll begin momentarily." I remembered the way his hand had lingered on my wife's back at the party. Now, he wouldn't even look at me. Sophia entered 2 minutes later. I caught the exact moment she registered my presence. Her shoulders tensed, then forced themselves to relax. She'd worn her power suit, the charcoal one reserved for board meetings. But her eyes darted between the folders, Dana, and the door. "Thank you for joining us," Dana began, opening her own folder. "We need to discuss some concerning discrepancies in travel records and expense reports." The fluorescent lights hummed. Outside, someone laughed in the hallway, the sound muffled through thick glass. "I have here," Dana continued, "documentation showing overlapping hotel stays in Chicago, Boston, and Miami." She laid out printed folios, all charged to corporate accounts under questionable project codes. The VP's jaw tightened. "I'm sure there's a simple explanation." "There's more." Dana nodded to me. "Mr. Caldwell?" My fingers felt oddly steady as I opened the first folder. One by one, I placed the notarized exhibits on the table. Bank statements, credit line documents, the falsified signature, text messages with timestamps matching hotel charges. Remember how you laughed when I said I'd find proof? I wanted to ask Sophia, but I kept quiet, letting the evidence speak. The VP tried bluster. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly—" "Your signature," I said quietly, sliding the credit line application closer. "On a document I never saw." Sophia's composure cracked. Her fingers gripped the armrests of her chair, knuckles white. "We take financial misconduct extremely seriously," Dana stated, her tone leaving no room for debate. "Both the misuse of corporate funds and the apparent identity theft will require immediate disciplinary review." The silence felt heavy enough to touch. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady despite everything. Sophia stared at me across the table, fury smoldering behind her perfect makeup. The mask had finally slipped, showing the rage beneath. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't speak. "Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Caldwell," Dana's chair scraped back. "Please step outside with me for immediate consultation. Mr. Caldwell, if you'll excuse us for a moment." They filed out, leaving me alone with the scattered documents. Each page represented a betrayal, laid bare under harsh office lighting. My pulse raced as I thought about the courthouse waiting across town, Judge Patel's chambers, and the legal reckoning still to come that afternoon. The door clicked shut behind them. I could hear muffled voices in the hallway, rising and falling with tension. The courthouse air conditioning hit me like a wall as we entered that afternoon. My attorney led the way, briefcase swinging purposefully, while Caleb walked beside me offering quiet support. The familiar scent of wood polish and paper filled my nose, bringing back memories of signing our marriage license 5 years ago. Different courtroom, different dreams. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Patel entered. Her reading glasses caught the fluorescent light as she settled behind the bench, expression neutral as granite. I stood straighter, hyper-aware of Sophia and her attorney across the aisle. She'd changed into a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The thought made my jaw clench. "Your Honor," my attorney began, "we're seeking an emergency temporary restraining order regarding marital assets, pursuant to Section 8.3 of the prenuptial agreement." Judge Patel nodded, accepting the first bundle of exhibits. I watched her methodically flip through bank statements, hotel folios, and corporate expense reports. Each page represented hours of careful documentation, nights spent building my case while pretending everything was normal at home. "These signatures," she said, holding up the credit line application. "You're alleging forgery?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Caldwell never saw nor authorized these documents." Sophia's lawyer rose smoothly. "Your Honor, these claims are speculative at best. My client—" "I have the original prenuptial agreement here," Judge Patel interrupted, lifting another document. "Section 8.3 specifically addresses infidelity and financial misconduct. The 30-day window for filing appears to have been met." Caleb leaned close. "The fraud evidence is solid," he whispered. She can't dodge this. I nodded slightly, keeping my eyes forward as Judge Patel continued reviewing. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. My palms felt damp, but I kept them steady on the table. Finally, she set down the last page and removed her glasses. Based on the documentation presented, I'm granting the temporary restraining order. All joint assets are frozen pending further hearing. The property at 1842 Maple Street is to remain undisturbed, with Mr. Caldwell retaining primary access. My shoulders dropped as I exhaled. Across the aisle, Sophia sat rigid, whispering furiously to her lawyer. Additionally, Judge Patel continued, I'm referring evidence of potential corporate malfeasance to the relevant authorities. Mr. Caldwell's exhibits suggest serious financial impropriety that extends beyond this court's purview. The words landed like stones in still water. I could almost feel the ripples spreading, toward the VP's corner office, toward the executive floor where Sophia's desk sat, toward careers built on carefully maintained images. Do you understand these orders? Judge Patel asked sharply. Yes, Your Honor, I answered, my voice clear and steady. Sophia's yes came out clipped, nearly inaudible. Very well, Judge Patel gathered her papers. I'm also ordering both parties to prepare full financial disclosures within 10 days. The court will review evidence of additional misconduct at that time. The gavel cracked once, definitive as a gunshot. The days after the court hearing felt like waking from a long fever. I returned to work, filed reports, ate lunch at my desk, normal things that somehow felt brand new. Every morning, I checked my email to find updates from Dana Greer's office. The VP had been placed on administrative leave pending review, and Sophia faced suspension while they investigated the reimbursement irregularities. I remember sitting in my office one afternoon, watching rain streak the windows, when my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. Corporate counsel requested all your documentation. They're taking it seriously. My hands didn't shake anymore when these messages came. I'd stopped jumping at shadows, stopped rehearsing arguments in my head. The truth was doing its own work now, precise and unstoppable as a clock. The following week, my attorney called to confirm the temporary orders had been extended. The freeze on assets will hold through discovery, she said. Your wife's counsel is pressing for mediation. Let them press, I replied, surprising myself with how calm I felt. We'll proceed exactly as planned. That weekend, I found myself driving past our old neighborhood. The maple trees were just starting to turn, like they had been the day we first toured the condo. Back then, Sophia had squeezed my hand and whispered about building a life together. Now, I saw how that life had been mostly scaffolding, all facade, no foundation. Have you ever noticed how healing feels like cleaning house? You sort through what's broken, what's worth keeping, what needs to go. I spent a Sunday afternoon viewing apartments, finally choosing a one-bedroom with tall windows and hardwood floors. The landlord handed me a single brass key, and something in my chest loosened. Moving day came quietly. No drama, no confrontation, just me and a rented truck, methodically loading boxes I'd packed over several evenings. I took only what was undeniably mine: clothes, books, the desk I'd refinished myself. The rest could wait for the lawyers to sort out. My new place felt sparse at first, but in a clean way, like fresh snow. I assembled my bed, arranged my books, hung a few photographs, none from the wedding. Near the window, I installed a small brass hook, the kind you might hang a plant from. That first morning in my own space, I woke to sunlight spilling across the floorboards. I made coffee in my old French press, its familiar burble the only sound in the apartment. Standing by the window, I lifted that brass key, the one the landlord had given me, and hung it on the hook. The morning light caught it, turning the metal to gold. Such a simple thing, a key on a hook. But it hit me then what I'd really won. Not just the legal victory, though that mattered. Not just the corporate fallout, though that felt like justice. What I'd won was the right to be visible again, to occupy space without apology. I touched the key gently, watching it swing. In the end, I hadn't needed to shout or rage or tear anything down. I'd simply needed to be precise in my documentation, in my timing, in my quiet insistence on truth. You know what I learned through all this? Justice isn't loud, it's precise.